Hey there, I'm Pete Townsend, and this is Money Never Sleeps. We look inside the minds of entrepreneurs and at the crossover of startups, enterprise, finance, technology, and life as we know it. This episode of Money Never Sleeps is sponsored by Philip Lee, one of Ireland's fastest growing corporate law firms and expert advisors at the heart of the Dublin and London startup, fintech, and crypto communities. Joining the show this week is Tim Boss, founder and CEO of ShareRing, a blockchain-based company that's focused on changing the landscape of the fragmented sharing economy. In this chat, Tim and I talk through his crystal ball-like experiences in deep tech in the 90s, how being a third-time founder has shaped his view of the blockchain space, adapting all of this incredible technology at our fingertips into real-world scenarios, and what makes a great Web3 project. All right here on Money Never Sleeps. Hello, everyone, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for joining us. Great to have you on board. This is our Web3 Convo series. Today, we've got Tim Boss, who's the founder and CEO of ShareRing, who's pioneered the world's first user-focused ecosystem for the issuance, storage, verification, and sharing of personal information and key documents. So also, Tim is CTO of our accelerator program. So we're very lucky to have Tim on board for that. Tim, thank you so much for joining. How's it going today?
Thanks, Pete. It's good to be here. Going well. Weather's great today.
Good. You're in Melbourne, yeah?
I am, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. As I mentioned, I'm in Dublin, but you know that. And just for the sake of the crowd, some may know that I'm originally from Boston, and the baseball cap that Tim is wearing has New York Yankees on it, who are my arch rivals. The rivalry has softened a bit over the years. Yes. Thank you, Tim. But I got a quick story for you. So Ben Affleck, you know him, the actor. Yeah. I think it was the movie Gone Baby Gone, perhaps. The director wanted him to wear a New York Yankees cap for a specific scene in the movie, and because the director thought it was the right thing to do. And Ben Affleck refused. He wouldn't wear it because he's from Boston. He's a Red Sox fan, and he was just so against it. And the director said, listen, Ben's just not a professional. And so I'm going to do my best to be a professional today, and I'll hold my fire.
I'm going to send you one of these, and the next chat that we do, I'm going to make you wear it.
Oh, yeah, good luck. Good luck. That won't happen. Just, I could pull down loads of paraphernalia there up on the wall, the Boston Red Sox. I got Ted Williams up there. I got Tim Wakefield. Not that any of these things, mean anything to you. But anyway, Tim, listen.
I mean, this is just a hat. I mean, we've got 100 hats, but I might grab the red hat today and put that on.
I'll let it go.
We've got a Boston one down there somewhere.
Good man. Good man. I'd love to hear that. So listen, just to kick things off, Tim, you've got a fascinating background in this space. And when I say in this space, I mean in technology in general. And when you and I chatted recently, you talked me through how you deferred uni back in the 90s to work for the largest video game company in Australia at the time. And that you just kind of created a render farm in a video game through connecting a bunch of computers together, doing mathematical calculations into wireframe 3D art, which kind of feels like where we are today, right? And without you even knowing it. And then you just kind of led up through the next 14, 15 years to the point where you were mining Bitcoin in 2010. What were some of the key lessons that you learned from that period, right, that impact how you think about Web3 today?
I've always approached things from the perspective of a problem that needs to be solved. And we were developing a game. I can't remember what it was called, Aliens something. And what they needed to do was basically render the intro sequences. And back then, this is sort of the mid-90s, and you couldn't do, real-time rendering and things like that you can now. So we needed to work out a way to render these 30-second intro sequences as quickly as possible. And the grunt that we had with the servers at the time just wasn't good enough. So I looked into a lot of the technology. I was more of an infrastructure person, but then I sort of worked out that distributed computing was how we do it. So what we did is we set up a farm that had, I think, about 30 or 40 computers that were all sort of networked together, and they would share the load in rendering, doing very difficult computations to render these 3D animations. So they do one scene at a time, and it was spread across all these computers. And we managed to get it done. And through that process, I actually had this thought that this is something that we shouldn't have to just do in-house. Like, imagine if we could distribute this out amongst computers around the world and pay for computer time to do all of that. So when a friend of mine actually told me about Bitcoin in around 2010, it fascinated me because the idea of these distributed computers around the world solving these difficult mathematical problems to be part of this consensus of the new digital currency. It just fascinated me. So I started mining and just purely out of interest for the technology. And that's really sort of what got me initially a little bit into cryptocurrency. I mined it for a while. I had quite a lot of it. So on like a lot of stories on a hard disk somewhere that I've got no idea where it is. Yeah, probably deleted or in a tip somewhere. But yeah, I mean, that's really sort of the early beginnings of my fascination with distributed computing environments.
And what was it like mining Bitcoin in 2010? That was the big thing we put out on Twitter that Tim is going to answer for us.
So what I remember was like, it took me a few hours to actually just figure out how to do it. And I basically booted up a laptop, and I have a work laptop, and I basically trying to get this software to run on this laptop. And it was so confusing because I had no idea what it was about, what I was doing or anything like that. I was trying to sort of get it running in Windows, and it was just, yeah, it was impossible. I ended up sort of getting on my desktop computer at home and booting up one of my Linux machines and ended up setting up and running there. But the thing is, back then, when I came to set up, there's this process where you set up this private key, like you got to set up a wallet address, private key. Back then, you don't think of or understand the importance of a private key. It's sort of just this thing where it's like, oh yeah, and I'll save this in a notepad file and a text file, and I'll just put that on my disk, and that's it. And then you forget about it. But what you don't realize is that's sort of the keys to the kingdom, and you can't access anything with a private key later. So it was quite a long time after that I actually realized that was probably the most important part of the whole of everything I was doing, was to remember to keep that private key, because otherwise I'm mining for nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it's still to this day, 11 years later, there are still people who, might write that down and stick it into a cabinet somewhere. Right.
Yeah.
And who knows what's going to happen to that. Now, there's obviously a lot more innovations that have happened since then to enable folks to be able to secure that and not have to write it down and stick it into a cabinet somewhere. But we still see that taking place quite frequently.
But even now in mining, like I remember I set up a Ethereum miner GPU farm with some Radeon RX 480s and 580s in 2017. And even then setting that stuff up wasn't super straightforward. There was no really easy to understand user interface to do it. The best way to do it would be to basically once again run it on a command line interface where you stripped out all of the graphical side of things so that you're maximizing the power of the GPUs. So even setting that up, running sort of 8 or 16 GPUs wasn't easy. It's never made to be user intuitive or anything like that. It's made for techies to basically get in and do it. And when Antminer sort of started releasing their Bitcoin mining machines, where you just put it in, you plug it into the network, you plug power into it, you remote control some settings into it, you enter a deposit address, and then let it run. That was a real turning point to allow for mass mining of Bitcoin and other algorithms as well.
I gotcha. No, it's fascinating. It's fascinating thinking back to what it was like back then. I know that you've launched a couple of businesses. You're on your third go rounds. Tell us about the ShareRing business today and how that's unfolded since 2018. Yeah.
Yeah. So we established a business in 2018, and ShareRing was really started off the back of a concept that I created back in 2013. And it was really about creating a platform for the sharing economy. The sharing economy and a lot of other industries, as we've subsequently expanded into, is really an industry based on trust. So, and that's sort of fundamental to anything within the sharing economy, travel industry and things like that. So when we sort of look at what we do at Sharing, it's really, our vision is really to create a world that's built on trust. And we use the platform that we've developed and the ecosystem that we're developing to help create that world built on trust. So effectively what we're doing now is we're taking a lot of aspects that we started building in 2018, but really expanding that to be able to provide frictionless access to goods and services anytime and anywhere. So that includes things like the sharing economy, travel industry, which is things like when you book your hotel, you don't have to enter all your details again. You can check into the hotel without having to go and queue up and hand your passport over and all that sort of stuff. You can open a bank account without having to sort of go to the bank and fill out forms and go through that process. You can access an event with a simple scan of a QR code, but by scanning that QR code, you're proving who you are, that you've got a ticket, that you're vaccinated if you need to be, and so on. So we look at effectively what we're doing as providing frictionless access to goods and services. And the areas that we're doing, and where you sort of say what's changed or what's new from 2018, is we spent a lot of time really looking at identity and what we call our sharing vault, which is the vault with verifiable documents or verifiable credentials that's stored on your phone. So it's like a self-sovereign system using blockchain technology to verify the information hasn't changed and verify its validity. So we spent sort of 2017 and 2018, 2019 was really building a lot of things around travel. And then obviously 2020 hit and we sort of put a bit of a hold on the travel products. But that actually allowed us to go back and look at our foundations and strengthen a lot of what we'd built around the blockchain with Share Ledger, strengthen a lot of what we have around sharing ID and expand it to the vault with documents as well. And then really start looking at where we're going from now into 2022. And the areas that we're sort of looking at is around enterprise services, which is where we've been speaking a lot about, which is sharing access, which is access to events, access to certain locations, issuance of certificates, like could be vaccine certificates, identity and things like that, access to workplaces, using the technology. Then what we're calling the merchant model, which is where some of the travel stuff fits in. So accommodation, which is going to be launched very soon, activities, flights, insurance, electronic visas, shop and e-commerce. So that's where our merchant services. And then another area that we're launching, which is around digital lifestyle services. So that looks at digital access to websites, metaverses, document signing, NFT usage, and all of those. But they all fit under that brand of being able to sort of build trust, but also frictionless access to various goods and services.
And is this all dependent on connecting with merchants, connecting with those providing the goods and services to have them integrate with ShareRing?
Yeah, so in the merchant model, it is. So the merchant model requires us to integrate with various merchants. And we've got a big framework in place that makes it a lot easier for us to do now that we've got the accommodation. So accommodation is the first cap off the rank, and that's in partnership with Rakuten Travel Exchange in Japan. And then we've got some other things following on for that, which are like activities with Viator, and then some other sort of partners, insurance with Divya in Thailand, and some other that we're doing off that. And we basically, as well as the transactions that creates, we also make the revenue off the margins that come off those products as well. But when you look at it from a bigger picture, one feeds into the other. So as we bring in people that go to an event, we can offer accommodation and activities and things like that. The mass user products, which are around some of the pretty unique things, but ones that we believe will go extremely well around NFTs. So it's not about NFT images or what most of the projects are. It's actually some real world use for NFTs. Some of those, which could potentially go viral, will actually give us users, which creates stickiness, which then feeds into the things that we offer in the merchant model and enterprise services as well. But it's all based on exactly the same foundation, which is it's a Share Ledger blockchain, the sharing vault, which is verifiable credentials, and then the app ecosystem that we're building as well.
I gotcha. I'm thinking a couple of things here. I'm thinking one, flywheel, which is one of my favorite concepts from the year 2021. Well, it's 20 years old, but I dug into it this year. Where and network effects, like you're talking about, bringing businesses to individuals, bringing individuals to businesses.
Exactly.
Square has done a really good job of that this year. They acquired a business that I'm sure Afterpay in Australia, and bringing this BNPL, buy now, pay later component, which connects merchants and individuals together, right? So there's all these components in there that sounds really cool. When you kind of step back, like you were saying a minute ago, and you think about providing frictionless access to goods and services, that is a big kind of umbrella level. How big can this get? Where is this going to go?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing is, we look at it and say, we have people just constantly coming to us and saying, why don't you use it for this? Why don't you use it for this? Why don't you add this onto it? So one of the things absolutely that we will start looking at is how do we get the community more involved, and how do we get external developers to start writing sort of their own add-ons to the system to be able to sort of expand it more. And what we don't want to do is create this walled garden where we're the only ones sort of offering the apps and things like that. But we need to start somewhere and create that guidance to start with. But in terms of how big can it go, one of the goals is to also create tools to make it easy to integrate with our system, like even things like website logins to be able to use our app to log into a website. But as part of that, it sends the verified information to that website to sign up for it, no password, things like that. So, you know, it's just incredible how much that we can actually do out of this with the plan that we've got ahead of us.
Awesome. And what I love as well is that when I checked out ShareRing on the website and I had a look, you can see the living, breathing blockchain, and you could see the verifications moving through, and you see it pulsing, right? It's wonderful.
Yeah.
And just for the benefit of those folks that we have on with us today that may be building on blockchain themselves, what were some of the kind of early challenges that you had with this technology and wrangling it into shape?
So we made a very bold decision to develop a layer one blockchain solution. So to do that, when we first started the planning in 2017, was a huge call, and we looked at the idea of either developing something ourselves from scratch or looking at an existing framework that we would use to build with. My recommendations in terms of or advice would be to really understand exactly what's required to do something like that and take something like that on. And one of the things that we've had all these timelines and plans and all of that in place in terms of developing the blockchain, but we were working with what was a beta blockchain at the time, so very early development with a lot of issues, and we had to spend a lot of time debugging and working on those issues. Looking back, I wouldn't choose to do a layer at this stage still. I think we made the right choice, but we're probably 18 months or even 2 years too early in terms of starting that process. Because really the choice for us at the time was we fork Ethereum and work with that. Proof of stake for Ethereum was barely an idea back then. We look at Waves was another one that we looked at, called Tendermint, which was the Gaia framework was what it was called. And that was about it. Polkadot was an idea that was not much more of a white paper at the time. So I think it would be really sort of going with your eyes open, understand that getting resources to do this sort of stuff is hard. Focus on training people with the right skills, like not exactly like blockchain skills, but they might have skills in Golang, for example, if you're doing sort of layer one technologies. So understand that you need to invest money into training the right people. That does take time. Hiring takes time. Expanding the team takes time. And don't go too early and try to start selling a product that isn't ready for real time as well. There's a lot of vaporware that gets sold out there, and we've failed on a few fronts in that sense, where we've started selling ideas before they were ready and had to reprioritize away from those ideas due to market forces as well. One of the things that I remember just now is we were doing a presentation to a very large company, and one of the things that we basically brought to them is to say, well, when we get users from this area, it'll feed into that area, which means we can introduce customers to your products that you're selling. And they basically came back to us and said, how many users have you got? We said, well, 0 right now. And because this is before we officially launched.
Yeah.
And then they basically said, well, you've got 100,000, come back to us and talk, because we really love what you're doing. And this is an amazing concept, but we want to see proof of blood first. And that's one of the other challenges when someone is building a business like this, is if you don't have a really, really good network of people that are going to support you and help pilot your product and become customers, which we've been super lucky that we do. We've got an incredible network of people through my previous contacts and some of the people that we've hired and our board of directors as well. If you don't have that, you need a plan for how you're going to either spend money or do some very good marketing to start getting some real users on your platform that will start using it before you can start dealing with the larger companies.
That's an awesome point. And we talk a lot about community building in this space. And when you think about community building in Web3, you think about Discord, you think about Twitter, you think about, engaging with an audience, and, some of that is Twitter ads and paying for that type of stuff. But what you're talking about is, listen, I've been through this a few times. I've got a pretty good network. Everyone the founding team is a pretty good network. We can leverage that and as communication channels. And that has nothing to do with Discord and Twitter, right? And can you talk about a little bit more about how you did that? Because I think that's an important thing for Web3 founders to think about, is that it's not just all about Discord and Twitter, right?
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of it, for me, a huge amount is network. It is people that know and trust you. And I think as you go through different businesses that you might start or different jobs that you have, don't ever burn bridges, because those people that you worked with before, it might be some of the people that you're going to call up because they're a prospective customer or someone that you might want to partner with, or somebody that might want to work with you. And you might want to call them up one day and basically say, hey, listen, we're building this. Do you mind sort of helping us out with a partnership or those pilots or something like that? And that really, really helps. And the other thing is, when you're hiring people, like salespeople in particular, don't just look for someone with the right skills. Look for people with a good black book, which is a book of contacts. A little bit of grey hair always helps as well, because you know that they've got some good contacts in the industry. And yeah, I mean, a lot of that's about the network. In crypto, when with people, Web3 projects that are basically developing things that are infrastructure projects for blockchain and things like that, it's a bit different. As you said, it's sort of, build a great Discord community. Before it was just Telegram, and get that community going, and have constant interaction with them, constant guidance with them, and things like that. So I mentor a few other people on projects, and that's a huge thing on Discord, is to make sure that you actually have some Discord within Discord. So make sure you have people that are genuinely within there, genuinely getting involved, genuinely chatting, giving updates, and all of that. So, it's something. We've got an amazing community. Our community gives us a lot of great feedbacks. The community managers that help manage that community are absolutely amazing. They're super supportive of what we do. We listen to a lot of the feedback when they're unhappy with what we do. We do take a lot of that in. We do try to make changes internally to sort of make sure that we're responding and being transparent to them as well.
Okay, I gotcha.
Hey everyone, this is Pete. Let me tell you about the folks at Philip Lee. A few years ago, I was at my first venture capital industry dinner in Dublin, and honestly, I felt a bit lost. I bumped into Andrew Tizali, one of the partners at Philip Lee. He bought me a pint and introduced me to the team, and they took me under their wing. That take you under their wing approach has been what I've heard consistently from fintech and crypto startups who I know have worked with Philip Lee in Dublin and London to help them wrap the right legal framework around their business, fundraising, and regulatory needs. And I can't recommend them enough. Get in touch with the team at philiplee.ie or on moneyneversleeps.ie/philiplee to learn more.
Lots that we can go deeper on there with Web 2 versus Web 3. When you're building something that requires both businesses and consumers/users to work together, that presents some specific challenges. One thing I wanted to dig into, though, Tim, is that, as I mentioned before, this is your third go round, right? And people talk about the lessons that you learned the first two times, making it easier for the third time. But the question that I wanted to ask is, what has made it harder to do this a third time? And when I say third time, I mean third time entrepreneur.
You know what's funny? I think the hardest thing is that I haven't taken a break between each of those times. So, and it's just my energy. Like I've got a huge amount of energy, and the other two times when we talk about third go around, we had successful exits in both of those other times. So with a company called Bio, which became acquired by a company called Procon, we had a very successful exit with that. What's made it harder? I think I try to get into more challenging type of businesses that we create. So I think the ideas keep getting bigger and more complex. I would love to sort of have the idea of, how do we make this little thing here, and how do we make $1 billion off them and sell them for $2 each? It just doesn't. You just can't do that. So I think the ideas are becoming more complex. I think the world that we're in is becoming more complex in terms of how do you market those ideas. It's becoming a lot noisier as well. So how do you break through that noise to get more and more people to see you? And that's always that's more and more challenging. Before, when we were doing car sharing with kids, we were one company in a very, very small number of competitors. So it was very easy to sort of break through that. The biggest problem we had with keys is we got stuck in this round of customization. We kept customizing the product and didn't really think about how do we create a generic product that scales for many, many, many companies. And there's lessons that we've learned in that area there that we're brought into sharing. And then the company at BioWatch, that was a very simple solution. We were very, very early to the game. Probably too early at the time, but once again, it wasn't like this where there's just hundreds and hundreds of companies that are just putting this big bag of this is a blockchain company, and you're fighting for people to get these communities of people that support blockchain projects, and that's it.
I hear you. I hear you. And thinking, a little bit more back to the technology side, there's a lot of buzziness around Web3 right now. It's just kind of gone through the roof, and a lot of what, I would just call cool technology in there, stuff that's like, wow, we can actually do this now. But thinking wider around decentralization, see elements of obviously all of that in your business, Tim. How do we adapt some of this really cool technology into real world scenarios?
Yeah, and I think that's where a challenge is for a lot of Web3 startups is some of them just say, this is really cool technology, I want to build this really cool technology. And then when they've built it, they're hitting a bit of a wall because there's no real world scenario where it would be used. And I remember in 2018, a lot of the funds and stuff were looking at protocols because they saw that if we didn't have good protocols in place and the infrastructure wasn't in place, then no one's going to start building good products and good Web3 products on top of these protocols and infrastructure that have real world use. And I think right now we're like, I get a lot of project pictures and stuff put in front of me just from either a mentor or to review for sort of investments and things like that. And there's so many where you just look at it and you say, this is such cool technology. I have absolutely no idea how this is ever going to be used. And then there's other ones that you look at and say, wow, this just makes sense. Like, there's I won't name any projects, but there's things like NFT for music contracts, which basically simplifies the whole Spotify engine. There's, I love NFTs, not for where they initially sit in terms of the art and the generative art. I love that, the tech behind that, but I actually love the potential for what you can do with NFTs in the real world and the usage of it. And then NFT usage within metaverse as well. I mean, metaverse is something that really excites me because the ability to sort of have a digital twin within sort of this metaverse and what people can create around that. And it's not just games and pay to earn games and all that sort of stuff. I just think that the opportunity to have within that area is just staggering. And the biggest fear is obviously some of the big companies, and won't name names, they're going to try to own that whole realm. And I think the best thing we can do is to make it open and make sure that as many different creators can get involved as possible to create their own metaverses and areas.
Yeah, I know. There's so much of this out there going on, but it's amazing, like you said, that, thinking back to your experience back in the 90s of starting to go down this path of what's happening right now with this technology, and that Neil Stephenson wrote Snow Crash in the 1990s, where he's talking about the metaverse, right? That's where it came from. I'm reading that right now. It's a great book, easy read. I like easy reads. And
yeah, read Diamond Age up there. I really like Diamond Age. It's another book by him.
Diamond Age. I will definitely check that out. But, is it that we imagine it and people then write a book about it that's science fiction themed, and then it happens 30 years later? Are these people incredibly prescient, or they time travelers, or is it just, hey, this is the human imagination? You think about things and you'd love to see it come to reality, and then people actually go to work doing the hard yards to get that done. Is it magical luck, or is this just actually the evolution of humanity?
100% time travelers. No, it's actually alien from parallel universe coming over to give us some hints. So there's this concept of, I wish I could remember the name of the concept, but there's this idea of if we are ready in terms of that, we have the technology and the means and the mechanism to be able to do something, someone's going to come up with that idea to do it, right? So I think with Snow Crash, that came out around the time with VR. VR version 1, very early days VR was really starting to sort of get legs. So the idea didn't just sort of come out of nowhere. There's always a basis for when someone who's quite prophetic in their ideas, like a science fiction writer, for example, there's always a basis where they're coming from with those ideas. And I think it might have been Neil Stephenson, or it might have been someone like Stephen Baxter or something like that. But it was William Gibson wrote about that thing. Is if it's possible and if it can happen, someone's going to come up with the idea. And it's similar to, when you wake up in the morning, you go, oh, I've got this amazing idea for a business. I'm going to do this, and you think it's just like super futuristic. It's such a cool idea. And then a week later or a month later, you're reading the news that someone's starting a business to do literally exactly what you said. And people sort of talk about this combined consciousness and that. But the view is that you came up with it, and they came up with it, and 10 other people around the world came up with it because it's possible now. Yeah. And it wasn't possible a year ago. And that's why people are starting to come up with that idea now, because all of the bits and pieces come together to make that idea possible.
Absolutely. When William Gibson wrote Neuromancer, right, back in the 80s, he said that, I don't know, it might have been a year before or while he was writing the book, either the book or the movie Blade Runner came out. And he's like, oh my God, someone already had my idea. And he had to rewrite the first third or first 2/3 of the book a number of times before he got it right. When I read Neuromancer, I'm like, the first 2/3 of the book, I had a lot of trouble reading because it was just jumping all over the place. And then the last third was fantastic. I totally got it. Yeah. So, case in point there. But yeah, and we see these things in cycles in science fiction and also in real life and in business. It's happened before. It's going to happen again, right? From the show Lost, which I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole. But Tim, before we get to the crowd questions, I just wanted to ask you one more. What do you think is a leading indicator for an early stage company, an early stage project, of what makes a great Web3 project?
Wow. I mean, I think team is a big one. So it's not just about the team's history and things like that. It's about, is this a team that has the ability to put together the great idea to come up with it? Another indicator is, does this idea have real world use or real world benefit? And then obviously look at what are their barriers. So barriers might be not the right team or things like that. And then the uniqueness of the idea. It doesn't have to be super unique, but if they're sort of coming up with an idea that you've seen 20 other pitches for in the last week, what makes you think that they are going to be able to do it that the other 20 aren't going to be able to do as well? And then their approach. I think it's really important to sort of look at what their approach is, how they're going to scale, and then how they're going to do even things like marketing and PR as well. And then you look at if they're doing a fundraise, what are they raising? Are they raising enough? Like some of these projects are looking at raising a very, very small amount, and there's absolutely no way they'll be able to do what they're going to do with the amount that they're raising. But then you look at maybe some of their token model, and it's obvious that they're raising a small amount because they're hoping to get more money out of the token itself later on, things like that. But yeah, I mean, I think team, barriers to entry, ability to scale, their PR, marketing plan, and how are they going to do better than the other 10 companies that are inevitably going to try doing it as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the things that I've been picking up on recently and thinking about this accelerator, Tim, is that you can look at Web3 and think about, okay, there's so much money going into the space right now. There's so much momentum and buzz, but at the end of the you're a Web3 project rather than a Web3 business or startup, right? But we kind of have to bring this back to the fact that it is very, very hard to get a decentralized model to market first without starting as a centralized entity. And when you are a centralized entity, you have an operating company, you have P&L, you have staff to pay, you have all of that. And when you rebase it that way, one of the Techstars MDs from the US was talking about the 300 slides that he had accumulated over the years of how to get startups thinking about KPIs. And I'm like, and when you start thinking about KPIs at the very basic level, you think about how do you get your customer funnel going, right? Your user funnel. How do you actually gather users and bring them in and then get them to use your product, get them to love your product, and get them to tell other people about it, right?
A lot of it as well. I remember in 2017, 2018, the big question was why blockchain? And it's still valid for Web3. Some people look at Web3 and say, I'm going to come up with a product that uses this. But then other people, and that's the wrong way to do it. Other people basically say, this is something I'm really passionate about. We want to build a product. The only way we can do it is if we're doing it with Web3. And that's a better approach because you're thinking about the outcome. You're already thinking about scale. You're looking for the best Web3 approach to solve this solution and develop this product that you're doing as well. And the answers will come a lot easier to you if you're starting with the solution as opposed to starting with the technology looking for a solution as well. And as you said, scale and the ability to grow very, very quickly. A lot of it is even when you ask questions, why are you using this chain, for example? Do you know that the cost of this chain is going to be this? You're never going to be able to scale because, the transaction costs of gas fees are far too high for what you want to achieve. So a lot of these things that they need to have thought about as well as part of coming up with that technology that supports the solution.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And sorry for my distraction just there for a second, Tim. Our friend Shane McQuillan was calling me there on Telegram, and shout out to Shane, and he must not be logged in and watching us this morning or this evening, wherever he may be. But we, just thinking about we do have a few questions out there from the crowd. We've got, hey, Tim, are you open to onboarding businesses in Africa for ShareRing?
Yeah, for sure. We're actually talking to a couple of people over there at the moment. So we have a division within ShareRing. So we've got merchant services, which would look at onboarding any types of businesses. But merchant services, we initially look at onboarding businesses within that have more of a global reach. So where people from anywhere in the world can actually access that. As part of what we do, the next step is to look at locations where we have, hotspots of large numbers of user downloads, or it makes sense to focus in local services within those countries. So that's that. And then there's the enterprise services, which it's currently geographically aligned, but if there are opportunities outside of the few geographies where we're looking at the moment, then it's certainly something we could look at. So please get in touch with us.
Okay, very good. Thinking about going back to decentralization a little bit, Tim, and what I said earlier about how hard it is to actually start off with a decentralized protocol. I heard, again, this was on the FinTech Blueprint podcast that I listened to a lot. I highly recommend it for people to try to get their head around this because it goes wider than FinTech. And that it was the founder of Maker, I think it's Rune Christensen, and he was talking about just now, and this was actually recorded in April, they are dissolving the foundation. So like we talked about, start off as an operating company, then you get to a point where your community is driving things a bit more, and P&L of the operating company matters less, and that operating company becomes a foundation. And then as you decentralize even more, your community and those building on your platform take over, and that then becomes, that foundation is then no longer necessary, and that dissolves. And back in April, Rune was talking about dissolving that foundation, and now it's just totally community supported. Do you ever see that happening with ShareRing, that it does become truly decentralized?
Yeah. So I actually, even right now, I see ShareRing as the operating company being just one client of that blockchain and the modules and the contracts that sit on top of that blockchain. So if we start looking at ShareRing as a client of that, then it is always possible that, we could still keep ShareRing as an operating company, but other communities, groups, companies, DAOs, whatever, can actually start developing their own technology on top of that that layer one blockchain, and also the smart contracts and all that sit on top of it. So that I guess is sort of the next stage of evolution for us in terms of detaching this idea of us holistically running the whole thing, the whole ecosystem, to sort of just offering the customer facing services that connect the Web3 tech to some of the sort of Web2 stuff that we're doing as well. So I think that's probably the most logical progression to do it. To entirely dissolve it, it's a very, very difficult thing when you talk about the type of partners and clients that we have right now to sort of look at doing that. And that's sort of why it makes sense for us to separate ourselves more from the blockchain itself and all of that, and we could even create DAO functions and stuff like that sit on there that we access as a client of those functions as well. But we as a company pay for the use of that blockchain as well. So when we use it, we pay transaction fees and all that. So no one, including us, gets a free ride in any of that. And even our pricing model separates us from the blockchain. So our blockchain is very transaction focused. It's about creating the purchase of tokens that create transactions on the blockchain. Whereas our pricing model to our clients isn't necessarily about those transactions. They generate transactions, but we have, a very, like a standard sort of operating model in terms of how we price for our clients as well.
I think we're onto something here, or you may already have figured this out. And I see this with other projects, and I see this with a enterprise blockchain project that I'm familiar with. It's happening in that a company started this building on a closed blockchain, and what will happen over time is that they won't become a foundation, they won't dissolve. Is that they will become a user, a project that is leveraging that blockchain, and that blockchain will open up and it will start connecting and bridging to other blockchains so that people can actually transfer assets and transfer value across from outside. But there will then be other people that are building apps on top of that as well that may have their own commercial model for the services that they provide. And I think that's a really cool model to pursue.
Right now, like we're an open permission blockchain. So the plan for us to, over time, relinquish that control of the governance of the blockchain itself. So it's exactly what we're planning on doing. And it's, the blockchain, we've already got things together to make sure that it's an open source blockchain. Other people will be able to start to contribute to it as well, to the development of it and the ongoing support of it. We've got more than 50% of the master nodes are not ours at the moment. So a lot of it is sort of slowly moving it out of our complete control as well.
I love it. It's awesome. We have one more question here. Any insight, Tim, on what it's like to be that early stage where you have no runway and you have no fun, no turnover, no revenue yet?
That's part of the business, isn't it? That's where credit cards come into it. That's so it's, there's so many people I speak to over the years that are basically creating their own company, and they start doing it while they're working for another company, and they sort of doing the evenings, and they wonder why they can't raise any money, and they wonder why they're not getting any progress or anything like that. And it's because they're not fully committed. And some people, it's hard. It's impossible for them to leave. They might have kids. They've got a family to support. They might be in a position where they can't simply leave their job and jump ship and start a company. And it is very, very hard. I was there when with the first company I started, BioWatch. Basically, I was very, very lucky. My grandfather loaned me the money to be able to start my company, and I'm forever indebted to him. He passed away a number of years ago, but yeah, that was, that gave me the ability to leave my job and actually just jump in and then just do it. And it wasn't a huge amount of money, and we burnt through it very quickly, but it allowed us to get to that first stage where we could get in other people or investors in to start working with us to build the company.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Sometimes it just takes that one thing, that one drop, right, to get you going. Yeah. And it's awesome to have had that from your grandfather. That's incredible. Mm-hmm. Tim, I think that is a great place to end this discussion. We've covered a lot of ground here, and we've talked at length about your experience, which is invaluable experience to bring to the founders in this program as the CTO of our accelerator. And I'm entirely grateful to you for doing this. So thank you, obviously, not only just for this chat, but being engaged with us for this so far, and being on board for what's going to be an incredible adventure with these 10 awesome projects that we're going to be bringing in come April. So thank you.
Thanks, Pete. Appreciate your time. It's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody, for joining today as well. And we'll check in with you soon. Thanks again.
That does it for this week, folks. A big thanks to Tim Boss for opening up his mind to help us figure out why he does what he does. Links to learn more about Tim Boss and ShareRing are on our website at moneyneversleeps.ie, so check us out online. Also, thanks to Conan Brophy from Create Sound for mixing and editing this episode. Conan is an excellent media man to get in touch with when you're thinking about launching your own podcast. As for me, I'm an early-stage startup investor and advisor focused on where fintech meets crypto and crypto meets Web3. If you'd like to talk to me about your business, drop me a line on info@moneyneversleeps.ie. Finally, till next time, thanks for listening. See ya!
Money never sleeps, pal.